Hey guys, in this video we're going to look at a Bill Gates interview where he is challenged by Jeremy Paxman on taxes and inequality. Now, I'm obviously in favor of a massive reduction in income inequality and a much greater taxation of the rich, but only as a transition step into a new economic system that does not deal with money, trade, or competition. Now, Bill Gates being a billionaire, he's going to defend and justify the existence of the billionaire class and that the system we live under is working just fine. So I'm going to respond to the points he brings up using a structuralist perspective, which is simply accounting for larger order factors when addressing issues such as inequality. And my point is to show how his simple, biased, and narrow-minded approach to the world is dangerous, because him and people like him give the public the illusion of hope and progress while completely missing the point when it comes to systems thinking, and that maybe our entire socioeconomic system itself is to blame for the growing problems of the world. So let us begin.
When you hear that statistic from Oxfam that the poorest half of the world's population own about as much as the 85 richest people in the world, including you, of course, does that make you feel uncomfortable?
Well, what makes me uncomfortable is that children die, that people don't get a good education, they don't get enough nutrition, and that's what I've devoted my life to working on. And so all of that money that's in my hands is actually going against those problems.
Okay, so the point about the rich using their money to help the poor is only partially true, given the nature of monetary dynamics and how capitalism functions. First off, there is inherent scarcity in the money supply, and money is created out of debt, which forces people to compete with one another for jobs and income, resulting in winners and losers, the losers being the poor. And with the addition of interest, this means the amount of debt and interest is always going to be higher than the amount of money in circulation. And we should all know what debt pressure creates: wage slavery. People have no choice but to submit to the system in order to survive. And with the odds stacked against the poor due to generational debt, this is clearly a case of economic bigotry, which Peter Joseph calls structural classism. It means that the class hierarchy is kept together under a rigid set of rules that are unchangeable and clearly favoring the rich and powerful. The wealthy only choose to help because they have an excess of money to spare, and they only get that money by extracting it from the scarce money supply to begin with, which means it's literally impossible for everyone to be rich in this system. But that's the very nature of a competitive market system, which cannot allow for everyone to be financially successful. To quote Stafford Beer, the purpose of a system is what it does, not what it's officially supposed to do. If capitalism was going to allow everyone the opportunity to be rich, it would have done it a long time ago, but clearly that's not the case. The way we resolve the issues of poverty is not by relying on rich billionaires who have acquired their wealth through the exploitation of the labor of the poor, but rather by addressing and changing the structure of the economic system itself to one that provides for people's needs without promoting artificial scarcity and competition.
But you don't deny the gap between rich and poor seems to have got worse.
No, the gap between rich and poor has not gotten worse, thank goodness. Less children are dying, people are living longer, people are more literate. If you go back far enough, everybody was poor. So if you just want everybody to be the same, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, when life was very short, a third of all children died before the age of 5. That was an age of strong equality.
I don't know where Bill gets his information from, but income inequality has certainly increased since the 1970s. Deregulation, busting of unions, tax cuts for the rich, the increasing power of Wall Street and investment banks, stagnation of wages for the middle class, and most importantly, the increase of cost efficiency by corporations through the use of automation has done nothing good for the average person and only benefited the upper 1%. And as far as the reduction of poverty, while it's true that fewer people live in extreme poverty, almost half the world's population, 3.5 billion people, still struggle to meet their basic needs. So I don't know how anybody can view this as a victory for the poor. And while the poor of today, on average, live better lives than kings of the past, that's only due to the advances of technology and modern medicine, not markets. And to assume that equality would mean everyone going back to a primitive life and in extreme poverty is ridiculous. The Scandinavian countries have far more equality than the United States, and last time I checked, their people are not simple, primitive potato farmers. In fact, some of these countries have the highest levels of technological innovation in the world. So Bill's answer is simply another cop-out for not wanting to actually look into matters.
You're a notable philanthropist, of course, but much of this aid is government aid. Why is it the business of taxpayers in the United States or in Britain or anywhere else in Europe or anywhere else in the world to spend money on poorer people in poorer countries?
Maybe it should be the business of rich countries to give to the poor, since historically, the global north, which houses most of the rich countries, has exploited and stolen from the global south, which contains most of the poor countries. Look, the idea of foreign aid as being a burden on rich countries is a myth. Dominant empires like the United States and England have taken far more resources from poor countries than they have given back. Let's look at the example of Zambia, an African country which has large stores of copper. While Zambia is very resource rich, it is financially poor and destitute, and the amount of foreign aid it receives pales in comparison to the corporate exploitation of its abundance in copper. So you know what? How about we stop exploiting poor countries to begin with? Maybe then they could care less about our foreign aid. The poor nations of the world are kept poor in order to have their resources exploited for corporate domination. So Jeremy Paxman is quite wrong on that statement.
Well, you have to decide, do the lives, say, in Africa have any value or not? Do we as we see them starving, not having enough nutrition, not having access to vaccines, does that bother us or not?
The problem is not that there aren't enough people who care to help the poor, but rather because our economic system is based on preserving artificial scarcity and dominance hierarchies. And so the issue is a lack of systems awareness about the structural flaws of our economy that cannot be overcome by actions that contradict its internal mechanics. In a system that's about self-preservation and competition, trying to fix the issue of poverty through charity is completely useless and hopeless, since it doesn't do anything to stop the constant perpetuation of market-generated poverty.
You could completely alter the picture of the world if you went for a genuine redistributive mechanism in taxation. Couldn't
You mean like North Korea?
No, I don't mean like North Korea. I mean...
Wow, really? I don't know where to start with this one. Even Paxman is stunned by what he's just heard. So apparently any attempt at a more equitable use of resources will lead to an authoritarian dictatorship. And by the way, North Korea is actually state-driven capitalism, where resources are highly unevenly given to the ruling family. There is no equality or democracy outside of what the ruler decides. This has got to be one of the worst examples I've heard as a defense of income inequality. And it's amazing how someone like Bill Gates, who is seen as a smart person, can make such foolish and uneducated comments regarding such a serious issue. I'm baffled.
No, I don't mean like North Korea. I mean by democratic consent.
Well, yeah,
You could do that.
You could adopt. Yeah, we have many democracies. They all have different taxation policies. The Nordic countries have certain taxation policies. The UK has different ones.
Yeah, we do have different examples to look at. Among the advanced countries, those with the lowest income inequality have the highest tax rates for the rich. Not to mention the highest social benefits for the poor and the lowest levels of corporate and political corruption. Countries with more equality also have higher literacy, better public health, stricter standards on environmental protection, lower violence crime rates, lower drug addiction, among many other social factors that should make it clear as day to anyone that inequality is a serious problem and that less of it is a better thing. So as much as Bill likes to just throw it out there that we can pick and choose which democracy to go with, there's clearly an objective answer as to which societies function better and which ones are more dysfunctional. Clearly the ones with more inequality.
And when you saw the results of the Senate investigation into Microsoft's tax affairs and the allegation that about $4 million worth of taxes a day wasn't being paid because of the way that Microsoft managed their affairs, what did you think?
I think that's about as incorrect a characterization of anything I've ever heard.
It was the allegation that was made?
No, it's just simply hogwash.
Okay, which aspect is hogwash?
The idea that Microsoft didn't pay its taxes.
Whoa, a little defensive, are we? I mean, I would be too if I had something to hide. First off, Paxman never said that Microsoft doesn't pay any taxes, but rather they don't pay enough taxes. So Bill clearly framed the question in a way that makes him look good. Second, there's clear evidence that Microsoft has avoided paying taxes. Like other multinational corporations, Microsoft has created a complex structure that allows it to move profits offshore to multiple continents to cut its tax bill. While the top US corporate tax rate has been 35%, through its offshore operations, Microsoft has been able to average its taxes down to 4%, a rate lower than any of the countries the company does business in. But all this should be no surprise to anyone. Our system incentivizes and enables the wealthy to avoid paying taxes, among many other social and environmental responsibilities. After all, when everything is up for sale, this includes politicians, legislation, and the ability for large companies to just pay their way out of trouble when caught, while getting right back to business as usual.
I paid more taxes than any individual ever, and gladly so. I should pay more, but I paid over $6 billion in taxes.
Well, the rich should pay a lot more taxes because they make a lot more money than the poor. So I'm sorry, Bill, but you're not going to get a medal for that.
How do you persuade people that it's their political or moral duty to pay more tax in order there can be some sort of redistribution?
You make sure that they follow the law and pay their taxes. If they don't, you put them in jail. It seems to work.
Bill Gates, thank you very much.
As long as the world continues to praise and gush over billionaires, the root source of society's problems will continue to be ignored. And it's interesting how Gates associates a redistribution of wealth to dictatorship and a loss of individual freedom, when the market economy is in fact a process of wealth redistribution itself. It siphons money from the poor and hands it over to the already wealthy. A new Oxfam report shows that the 1% now have more wealth than the other 99% combined. We are entering a new era of dictatorship, philanthropic totalitarianism. Real charity or philanthropy is the desire to dramatically change the preconditions that create social problems to begin with. We need to stop giving so much attention and praise to billionaires who brag about how much they are helping humanity, when in fact they are the representation of everything that's wrong with capitalism. As the late great MLK said, true compassion is more than flinging a coin at a beggar. It is the realization that an edifice that produces beggars needs restructuring.